Everta is basically it's a tier 1 charger OEM, a DC focused high powered DC chargers manufacturing in India. India 2047. There is a sort of a butler, electronic butler at home. Let's call him at Jeeves. So Jeeves is kind of managing my house in the background.
If I give you some superpowers now, let's assume 2 interventions that you want to take to achieve that vision.
Power is dangerous. That kind of power is definitely dangerous. Future is already here. It's unevenly distributed.
One feature that looks great in brochures, but nobody actually uses that. Imagine you accidentally hire a designer from Mars to build a charger for India. So what would they actually get completely wrong? How does a design changes from when we talk about an EV charger in Norway to Nagpur? A cheaper competitor who is undercutting your price by 20%. What will you do?
We're not in that game.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of What's the Vision. Today, my guest on the show is Mr. Manasvi Sharma, who has worked or spent years in Tata Power, then moved to Fluence, and now currently he's the CEO of Everta. This conversation was amazing. I really enjoyed it. Once you have done with this episode, do tell us about in the comments. What did you like about it? What did not like about the episode? This helps us to grow, to learn, to improve. I hope you would like this conversation. Enjoy the show. So Manasvi, tell us, Tata Power, Fluence, and now Everta. What is that shift that actually brought you to this company from your previous companies?
It's very interesting, Piyadarshi. So in Tata Power, I was almost 20 years with Tata Group, and a significant portion of that was with Tata Power. And Tata Power, as you and probably as some of your audiences will also know, Tata Power is in the entire value chain of electricity sector. So I started my journey in the sector from coal. And I was part of one of their thermal portfolio. I was spending and learning my ropes there. But actually, if you step in a little further down and draw out yourself a little bit more, I'm actually second generation into power sector. So so my father was in power sector, he was in generation. And so when I did my graduation in mechanical engineering, I kind of went into Tata Group at TCS. Spent some time over there, moved into something called as TAS, which is like an general management and administrative leadership.
One of the most sought out companies for a lot of management people.
Yeah, so I was through the in-house route.
Okay.
So when I did my TAS and I had options to rotate within Tata Group, one of the companies that I kind of spent my kind of rotation programs was with Tata Power. So after spending about 6-7 years in different industry, which was actually consulting, and then kind of going around within Tata Group into different group companies, I spent also a time with telecom company, and then with the startup space within the Tata ecosystem.
Okay.
Power sector was something which kind of really pulled me back. And after my stint there, I did a brief stint with a telecom company, Tata Communications. But then after that stint, when I had first opportunity, I kind of landed up back at Tata Power. So it was, I think, so even before Tata Power, I had that kind of inclination, which kind of brought me back into power sector. So I kind of grew up in thermal plants in the vicinity. My father was posted in quite a few of them. So while growing up, I had seen power generation happening. I knew a lot of terms even beforehand, turbines, generators, etc., etc. Even when I did not really make sense of it, but I knew them because I had been with my father to these plants. Yeah. So when I came back to Tata Power and started my journey there, I started at the thermal plant. So it was, when I started that journey, there was a lot of familiarity, so to speak. And I was able to get into the ecosystem very fairly quickly. So that's how my journey in the power sector started. But then moving on within the sector and within Tata Power also, I happened to get chance and opportunity to work within Tata Power into other parts of the value chain, so to speak. So generation was one of them, but then I was also looking at elements which are associated with hydro. Okay. I was also looking at elements associated with transmission and distribution. And then an opportunity, very interesting opportunity, which came up in Tata Power. So Tata Power was already a 100-year-old company. It was founded in 2000, 1914, and 2014 they were celebrating 100 years. So the board came back with a very interesting problem for the company. They said, we have been around for now 100 years. If we want to be around for next 100 years, what are the things that we should be doing?
Wow.
So there was a task group which was created. I fortunately got an opportunity to be part of that group, and I was also kind of helming it for a brief period of time. So we did a lot of research, we did a lot of study in terms of what could be the upcoming areas where Tata Power should be investing into. And we found out certain businesses that we should be either doubling down on or kind of expanding into.
Okay.
So one of the businesses, or there are some businesses that we were already doing, like renewables. We were also looking at rooftop solar as one of the important areas of expansion. We are talking about 2010, 2014 kind of a scenario, right? And besides that, we also found out some other areas, which included things like smart city at that point in time, because it was talking about not just a play from a smart city angle, but there was a lot of energy play into it as well. EV charging, energy efficiency, and home automation. So home automation was like a version of having a Fitbit for your home, kind of a thing. So that's how it's expanded into new businesses. I was heading that piece for some time. And from there, I kind of moved specifically into EV charging, because around 2016, 17, EVs started becoming, I don't know if you know of that time period where there was a big tender which came out on electric mobility. There were 10,000 vehicles which had to be procured.
So this was for government agencies, if I'm correct?
Yes. So, and Tata Motors won that. And as Tata Power, we were already working with Tata Motors as a group company on creating the ecosystem play. But with that tender happening, we got a lot of wind in our sails, so to speak. And we started working more closely at a group level and also individually within Tata Power. And then I kind of focused more into EV charging specifically rather than all the new businesses. So that's my foray from a transition from
to
larger power portfolio into renewable space, or more towards EV charging space. So with that, I was kind of instrumental in setting up that business and building up that from scratch, right? From moving from a small 1 or 2 people team to creating a EV CPO, charge point operator, which was one of the largest in the country. So I moved out from that role around 2022, and we were among the largest, if not the largest, I think at that point in time. We were the largest CPO. And it was a very interesting and a very fruitful journey, I thought. From there, I was also associated with, since I was part of this new business, new energy kind of ventures. So BESS became my next stop, which was next.
The next big thing for
not
India, I would say.
Interesting thing. I wouldn't say big thing, but it was a very interesting thing. I was kind of, after spending all these years in the power sector, I am convinced energy storage is one of the very, very important drivers for what's going to happen in power sector going ahead. And I thought it was an opportune time to be associated with that part. And then that is how Fluence happened. But then through Fluence and through my earlier stints, which were kind of, you always life always builds upon itself, right? So incidentally, one of these opportunities which came along was Everta. And while having seen the sector, the electric mobility sector from a different lens, from a lens of Tata Power as a charge point operator, and then also from the angle of Tata Group as a larger electric mobility ecosystem. This was giving me an opportunity from a very different manufacturing OEM kind of a play, wherein to say that what kind of hardware as a CPO, I would have worked with multiple OEMs. And here was an OEM which was aspiring to be a tier 1 player. And here was an OEM which was kind of building what a CPO wants from this kind of a hardware. So it was, I think, was a very interesting twist into my larger journey. And I think that's what kind of brought me into this Everta journey that I'm currently treading on. Sorry, a longish answer to your short question, but it was a meandering journey anyway, so that's how my answer is as well.
Yeah, we would love to know that journey actually. It was really interesting. And tell us more about Everta. What they are doing? It's an Indian company which is doing
So
something,
yes,
right?
yeah, absolutely. So Everta is basically it's a tier one charger OEM, right? We are setting up DC only right now, currently to be starting with a DC focused, high powered DC chargers manufacturing in India.
Okay.
We are working with another technology partners, which is one of the world's largest in this space, and we want to bring in those capabilities to Indian market, because what we believe is in India market right now we are still at very early stages in this electric mobility journey, and one of the important criterias which is kind of shaping this journey going ahead is obviously one is scale is going to be one important criteria, because I believe that from now till 2030 we're just probably 5% of the market.
Okay.
95% of the market is yet to happen.
Wow.
Right? So we believe we are already at that cusp of a very interesting and a long and a scale up kind of a journey that is expected to happen. And in this journey, one important element which needs to ensure that the entire ecosystem is getting created and supported is through reliable and strong hardware, charging hardware. And we believe there is an opportunity to make difference or add value in that space. And that is how Everta kind of has come into being. One of the important tenets, obviously, to support the electric mobility system is definitely a core tenet. Yeah. We want to support green mobility. We want to support EVs happening in India. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that this hardware ecosystem which is getting created is also very strong, reliable, and something which is India focused. Nice. So that's where Everta has kind of come in from. And Everta by itself, if you see, it's like a made up word, but it has got roots into two different words. One is EV. It's a play of word actually. It's on EV as well as transformation. Everta.
TA would be the transformation. Right?
Yeah.
Wow. So we've left some R in between just to connect that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were kind of looking out for words which will also be we will be able to IP on and create a brand upon.
Okay.
So, and also try and bring in the ethos or the kind of, the focus that we want to, mission that we want to work around with.
Very nice. An interesting journey that we actually saw from you. But now we want to move into future. So this is the time travel that we do for our audience. Or the visionary takes us to 2047. So if you close your eyes and see how an Indian city in 2047 would look like, it definitely possibly not talking only about chargers or energy, but give us a larger picture how you as Manasvi Sharma wants to look at India 2047.
Great. I think it's a very, very interesting question and a very thoughtful question, so to speak. So India 2047, if I can take the liberty, I would like to just kind of play out a day in the life sort of a thing, please. Right? So 2047 and it's morning 7 a.m. Let us say it's a large tier 1, tier 2 kind of a city. And we can also play this out for a smaller city or even for a rural area. But let's start with a tier 1 large city, like let's say Mumbai. Right?
Perfect.
7 a.m., 6:30 a.m., I get up. And the entire home is also surrounded by layer of solar cell, which is actually been generating power during the day, previous day. I also happen to have a personal BESS at the home. I also have a largely or maybe fully autonomous EV, which is also parked in my parking lot downstairs, which is also connected to my home and which is also providing me power for the entire home. So my home is largely all electrified. So most of the elements which are today, there could be heating or cooling. It's electrified in India, but in many countries it is not. In certain parts of India, it is still not. Yeah. That is electrified. Cooking is electrified, right? So most of the energy which is my home is getting powered from is coming from these two energy assets: my personal BESS, battery energy storage place, and my vehicle, right? So this is my day is kind of getting started. Most of my elements have components which are appliances at home are getting powered by these two devices. There is a, let's call that sort of a butler, electronic butler at home. Let's call him at Jeeves. I have a fascination for PG.
Wow, you've also given it a name.
Let's call him Jeeves. So Jeeves is kind of managing my house in the background, right? So he's the one it is the one which is kind of managing the entire show. It is ensuring that the power is coming in and all the appliances are the geyser is getting on at the right time, the toaster is getting on at the right time, etc., etc. And then by 8 p.m. or 8 a.m., by the time 8:30, I would like to leave for my office. My vehicle, which is an autonomous vehicle,
yes,
and it is also linked to my calendar, so it knows what time I have to leave to reach office in time, or wherever my point of work is, because we never know where that work is going to be. So it is kind of linked to where it has to go, and it is kind of calculated that, and it is already at my doorstep, and it is being powered by Jeeves to do that. Now, during the day, so it takes me autonomously to my place of location, and after dropping me there, it goes to another place where it gets charged during the day, and it is getting connected to the grid. My vehicle is V2G enabled, right? So, and it is bidirectional. So it is not just a instrument of mobility, it is also an energy asset. So it is it'll autonomously go to...
So possibly you're not scaring people about the range anxiety of the vehicle, but that's more related to getting the vehicle back and give back the electricity.
Yeah, so I mean, range anxiety will probably least of the worry, especially in the urban scenarios where 95% of the time the vehicle is going to be just at one location. You just have to do point A to B. I think that's hardly a range anxiety even today.
True.
And even going ahead in the future, so let's expand that scenario. So from 9 to 5, I'm in office or wherever my place of work is. And during that time, the vehicle, while it is getting charged, it is also providing energy to the micro grid level at the urban level, wherever the need is. Now, it's also the time of the day when the energy is the cheapest, because grid is already greenified and largely driven by solar.
Yeah.
And if you look at, I think Niti Aayog has recently come out with some papers for 2047. Yes. Even by their paper standards, I think they are saying that the green part or the non-fossil fuel part is going to be 1800 gigawatt. Out of the total 2100 gigawatt installed capacity of India by 2047, 1800 is going to be non-fossil fuel for a peak demand of 700 gigawatt. Out of which 1200 gigawatt is going to be solar. So if 1200 gigawatt comes online, let us say even 10% is not available for during a certain day. On most of the days, non-monsoon days, you have enough and more capacity of solar which is available more than the peak demand which is required at that point of time.
Yes.
Which means the energy is actually free. So what will we really pay for in that 2047 if it's not energy that we are actually paying for? It is actually the transition of the energy. It's time of the energy which is going to get used or transacted at will define whether it gets paid for or not. Maybe during the solar hours, energy is free. But during the transition times, which is evenings or in the night, when we depend upon nuclear, thermal as well, for the base load, and maybe on the BESS, at that point in time, the energy will be expensive or expensive than what would be probably during the day.
Yeah, expensive than what is free.
Expensive than probably, or it may be minimal, very low, very low. Negative numbers is something that we are seeing globally in many countries already, where the penetration level of solar is pretty high, right? So that could also be happening sometime in India. So that energy asset, which I have created for myself, my instrument of mobility, is also there for me as my energy asset. And during the day, when the distribution company is demanding it, it is also providing power back to the grid. It is registered as a asset which is available as capacity of storage. So as DISCOM, as all the, let us say, not just my pod, there are thousands of pods which are getting parked at a certain place. And that place is a reservoir of energy for the city. And city can dip into that at any point of time. So my asset, my mobility asset is also registered as an energy asset, and I get paid for that capacity being available to distribution company for its transactions of energy. And that is what will probably be either making me money or costing me money.
But if everybody starts doing that, then we have an excess of energy or electricity, I would say. Then who would pay for it?
So exactly. So now
The
through
DISCOM is doing their own job. You are doing or adding or supporting them
Right.
in their job. But then everybody is doing it. There is an excess supply.
So let's play this out a little bit more further. That's a very valid question if you ask me. So during the day, there is 1200 gigawatt of solar which is available for 700 gigawatt of peak, right? It has generated during the day.
Yeah. Excess.
Come evening, I have returning back home. What energy do I use? Solar is not there anymore. Wind is maybe 400 gigawatts. Thermal is another 300, but it has to ramp up.
Yeah.
Right? And then there is nuclear, which is kind of running at a steady 100 gigawatt kind of a load. But evening, when I come back, where do I use it? So there are two ways I need energy when I come back home, right? And how do I use it? One is what I have already extracted from the grid during the day is what I use during the night. Not just from my vehicle. I also need to have a personal BESS at home, which can also take power from the grid at that during when it is cheaper. Now, who else is using? Now, my requirement as an individual user is very small, but there are larger CNI customers, commercial and industrial customers. They cannot generate enough power, which is not just can be utilized by them. So they would be running 3-shift operations. They would be running multiple kinds of energy guzzling requirements like data centers also, what we are talking about. So all those will also need energy right through the day. Now, what I need at the end of the day may not, so my electric vehicle will be like say 100 kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
My demand at home will not exceed 5 or 6 kilowatt hours during the night, right?
Yes.
Maybe 10. What do I do with the remaining 90? Now that's when I can also push it back into the grid. Now grid can either take it from these thermal storage places, thermal generation units. It can take it from nuclear units. It can even take it from my level, right? Those elements, those reliable power which is coming from the grid from all these devices can actually go to CNI customers. Whereas at my neighborhood level, I could be an energy source. And what will DISCOM do in this entire situation? I believe besides the Jeeves, which we talked about earlier,
Sure.
which is like a personal energy manager at my level, at my home level, there would also be a need for a much bigger and a smarter Jeeves, which will be at the DISCOM level, which will then orchestrate. So there will be the need for energy orchestrator in this entire play, which will be saying, okay, this is this particular microgrid which is available with excess power. This microgrid is kind of falling behind. There are a lot of people right now who are turning on their devices. There are not enough EVs right now there which can power it, or not enough BESS which is powering this particular locality. Okay. Now, can I need to power from another neighborhood which I am ready with, right? Or do I need to bring in power from somewhere else?
So that's an intelligence that.
So that is the smarter grid part, or the energy orchestrator role which DISCOMs will be kind of becoming more stronger in. So maybe not DISCOMs, maybe there could be another player who'd come in, but there will be definitely a need for that energy orchestrator at individual house level, at neighborhood level, and maybe at the city level. And obviously at a regional level, at a national level, we already have grid operators which exist even today.
Wow. So then I think the data intelligence or the artificial intelligence companies listening to this would be like their ears up and thinking of these data centers that you talk about, which will require electricity and all that, possibly would want to make this happen so that everywhere the intelligence that you talk about, from the low level to up level to the centralized level, that would happen. That's what we are seeking in India 2047 journey, I believe.
Absolutely. And just to add to that layer of charging in all of this, right? and since I come from the charging industry right now, and maybe adding that element as well. These EVs, if they're autonomous, right, they have to be charged in a way that you don't need intervention from somebody else, right? Sure. So wireless charging is obviously a technology which even exists today. That is definitely a play which can happen. But at the same time, there would be other elements also coming in. Now, wireless charging, when you say, there are multiple forms of wireless charging. There is static wireless charging. Mm-hmm. There is also dynamic wireless charging.
While you're passing through a road?
So when you're passing through a road, like for example, even large vehicles which travel much longer distances, which travel between the cities, that's also need charging. And do you want to really stop for that kind of a charging? Or do you want to increase your asset utilization of these commercial vehicles which run long distances? Yep. So there could also be that opportunity which exists. But at the same time, another way of looking at it is the kind of battery chemistries are changing, the way the battery is evolving. Today we are already talking about 5 C rates, 10 C rates. C is basically effect of, or how fast can you charge a battery. So if a battery is 100 kilowatt hour and you can charge it in 1 hour, it is 1 C. If you can charge it in, say, 10 minutes, it is 6 C. Yeah. And today we are talking about batteries which are already at 10 C level. So we might also not see the need.
6 minutes and it's done.
Yeah, so you're talking about what you're talking about in the similar fashion as what we are experiencing at petrol pumps, right? Yeah. We get turnarounds of less than 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes. Yes. In next 20-25 years, can that technology be proliferated at a mass scale, at a larger scale? Why not? So that might just remove the need for even maybe wireless charging, even if you have to plug in guns. And if there is a need for doing that, that could also be just a flash charging. Yep. You just plug in, and 2 minutes later, you're done.
Wow. So rather than you have not even completed your tea or coffee, but your car is charged.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So now that we have created that vision, what's a headline in 2047? If you're reading a newspaper or you're seeing a news, what's a headline in 2047 that you would want to see?
There could be multiple headlines, actually.
Yes, please.
One could be...
so if we have to be a developed nation, we need to have multiple.
Yes. So recently, I don't know if you saw, there was a kind of a graph which was going around, a visual going around on social media, which talked about different penetration levels of electric vehicles in different countries.
Okay.
I would see, and there was Norway kind of topping the charts at 90% as always. Yeah. One of the visions or one of the headlines that would really make me feel good about it could be India is now the largest market for EVs with 90% penetration, or penetration's even higher than Norway. Wow. So that is one headline.
I don't know if that is even possible. They've already touched upon 100%. I don't know if we can go beyond that.
I don't know. That would be interesting though. Then another headline could also be in the space of power and other elements. Indian grid is the largest green grid in the world. Wow. And the entire electric mobility of the country is powered with green power for months, if not the full year. Wow.
That will be, I think, a dream of a lot of people in the energy sector, actually, if that happens.
I don't think that's too difficult, actually, given the kind of scale that we are talking about and the kind of energy requirement that you talk about from an electric mobility perspective. As a need of energy from a larger country level to a need of EVs only, the need is not that big. And the kind of electrification or greenification that we are talking about the grid at, I think we might just see it.
Wow. I hope that happens. I actually want to see that vision also getting into a reality. So Manasvi, now that we have built the vision for 2047 and that's how an India 2047 will look like to you or to others, let's draw a blueprint or a roadmap. How do we want to achieve this or how we will be able to achieve this? And let's break this down into 3 phases. Let's take 25 to 30, 30 to 40, and 2040 to 47. What needs to happen in each of these phases, which needs to be the big one, so that we can or we should be able to achieve the vision that you created?
Sure. So if one was to divide this time period into three phases, as you said, 25 to 30, 30 to 40, and 40 to 47. And if I let us say work backwards. So at a high level, probably I would say 25 to 30 is the point where a lot of things will get seeded or proliferated. Seeded is probably a wrong term because it's already seeded. I can see. I remember a quote from somebody which says that future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Oh.
So I think so future is already here in terms of electric mobility, in terms of lot of part of power. And I think it's already seeded. I think the question is now about proliferation. So I would say that 25 to 30 is a proliferation period where it is kind of getting spread out, scaled to some extent, to a good extent where it can start snowballing into much larger levels. 30 to 40 is the phase of consolidation and maturity.
So?
And 40 to 47 and maybe even beyond is a scale of complete growth. That is how I would divide these phases. Now, what does the final stage, like we described earlier? We're talking about almost 100% electrification penetration of the vehicles across electric mobility. We're talking about complete, I would not say 100% greenification, but a significant energy contribution is coming from the non-fossil fuel-based sources.
So you told that number of 1800 gigawatt hour.
1800 gigawatt of total installed capacity out of the 2100. So to that extent, yes, if you work backwards from there, that is what the end state looks like. And we're talking about large scale. When we say 100% electrification of vehicles, we're talking about large vehicles, whether it is buses, trucks, large commercial multiple axle wheelers, which transports good, which are the lifelines of any economy, including ours. Shared mobility, smaller mobility. India is also a mobility area which is where I don't think two-wheelers and three-wheelers are kind of being, whisked away into a...
So 70% of the total vehicles that are...
Absolutely. So next 20, 25 years, I don't think they're not changing. So I think electrification of all of these brings in different levels of complexity, right? And all of that needs to be baked in into this entire future part. Now, how do you work backwards from there? If that needs to happen, the kind of first 25 to 30, we need to have those options coming in on the vehicle side, which give people confidence. Charging infrastructure has to scale up with these different form factors. So whether it is four-wheelers and whether the battery capacities of these four-wheelers are changing from earlier when it was launched in 17, we had 18 kilowatt hour battery.
Initial one.
17 to 18 kilowatt hour battery. And even before that, even lesser. And then today we had, I think day before yesterday, I think Punch was launched.
Yes.
Which is probably now the lowest end of the vehicle segments, so to speak, four-wheeler segment.
Yes.
So that is about 35 kilowatt hour.
That's the minimum now.
Now that becomes now the minimum. And on a mid-scale level, we are talking about 60 kilowatt hour batteries. Sure. So I believe that from that scale, and also now the battery the rate at which it is getting charged is also changing. Today they are talking about 20 to 18 less than 25 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that, which basically means a 1.2 C rate.
Okay.
It was earlier 0.6 C rate. It has now doubled already. If you talk about BYD, which is one of the leading global EV manufacturers and also battery manufacturers, they already have launched a battery which is capable of doing 5C. They're talking about 10C now. So which means that if you have a 50 kilowatt hour battery, it can actually get charged at 500 kilowatt with the 500 kilowatt charger. Right? Okay. So the charger also has and these batteries are now coming into the vehicles. It's already from 0.6, it has moved to 1.2C. What does that mean? When 16, 17, the chargers are getting installed, the workhorse was 15 kilowatt charger. Then it moved to 25, moved to 30. Today we are talking about 50, 60. Most of the CPOs today are talking about 120 being the standard workhorse going ahead.
Yes.
Right? Now, going ahead, you would need larger capacity chargers. So larger capacity chargers, not just from the point of view of capability of manufacturing them, but also running them and servicing them. And that's where we will also, as the part of the industry, as OEMs, we will also have to match pace with the industry to say that, okay, today if we are talking about 60, next we are talking about 120, next we are talking about, at the bus level, we are talking from 120 to already 240, 320, even megawatt scale charging stations. So how do we pace up with that? So 25 to 30 is that part of that journey. On vehicle side, we'll see a lot of variety and a lot of options and mature options coming in from the customer's point of view, which will increase the penetration level, which will give confidence to people, which will increase the penetration. On the charging side, larger capacity chargers coming in. On the grid side, there will be more grid integration which needs to happen with this kind of charging infrastructure, which also kind of matches up at the highway level, at various kinds of even different kind of environments, whether it is large residential complexes also. So even there also the charging capabilities have to start coming into the big buildings. So that I think is the 25 to 30 phase. 30 to 40 phase is where I believe things will become more interesting. We will be talking about flash charging, even at home level probably. We will talk about more autonomous driving happening in maybe in Indian roads as well. Sure. Now with more autonomous driving coming in, what then transcends for charging, right? If there is an autonomous driver, autonomous vehicle, who will charge? How will the charging happen? Who will plug in the gun? So then things will either evolve to a place where we will talk about automated charging also happening, or wireless charging coming into play. Yeah. And then all of this, the other element which I spoke about in the vision is vehicle becoming energy asset. Yeah. Or charging, and charging has to kind of facilitate that. So vehicle will have V2G capabilities and the charging will have to be bidirectional. Yeah. Whether it is wireless or wired, whichever way it is, right? And then to support all of this, there has to be a regulatory ecosystem or policy ecosystem which can start building from 25, 30s and get more mature in 30s and 40s. Wow. To facilitate all of this to happen. Whether it is peer-to-peer trading, we have recently already seen the draft of peer-to-peer trading being announced. But then evolving that, even any kind of regulation which comes into play takes a lot of time to evolve. Even the market takes a lot of time to evolve. So that evolution, I think, will happen between 30 to 40. And from 40 onwards, we'll see the mass adoption, large-scale growth, complete proliferation across the economies. That what can happen during that kind of.
But a lot of people actually wonder or actually be surprised, and because we talk a lot about electrification of these vehicles, but then some people do not take these vehicles considering the technology will change. That's one, but they are also looking that another technology will come in by that time. That's always remain a question, right? But do you also think in the same manner, or will the electrification is the next thing that we'll see in next 20 years?
To my understanding and to my point of view, I believe for next probably decade or even probably longer than that, probably 2 decades, electrification is the primary change that we'll probably see pan out in the industry. Okay. Next challenging phase for that, I mean, obviously the battery chemistries will change, maybe the vehicle driving ranges expand over a period of time, the battery capabilities evolve, right? But from a primary, and obviously things like autonomous driving, etc., which are also the capabilities which are getting introduced, all of those will kind of build up. But from a primary drivetrain perspective, if one was to speak about, I think one of the biggest alternatives that one is speaking about is hydrogen. Yes. And I believe that from the given place it is currently at, hydrogen is still a little bit far away. Okay. From a commercialization angle, not from the angle of purely technology, but from a point of view of commercialization and proliferation of that technology. Unlike electricity, it needs to have its own set of infrastructure, which can tap into some of the existing infrastructure, which is from oil and gas. But obviously, that also needs to get modified, or that has to be augmented significantly to bring in that kind of infrastructure in place. So, from cost perspective as well as from infrastructure perspective, things have to converge for hydrogen a little bit more before we can say that it is a technology which is ready for mass scale up, especially in mobility. There are other use cases where it even already makes sense. But from a mobility perspective, I believe we will take some more time there.
So we can bank upon our electrification right now.
As of now, yes.
Okay, as of now.
And I believe that that's going to be the story for some time.
Okay. So now that we understand that electrification could be the story for 2047 or the next years that we're talking about, do you see any bottlenecks? It could be 1, 2 that could hamper this growth that we are looking at.
I think maybe not exactly hampering, but it will
slow.
It will define the pace of this growth. Let me put it this way. One story which is also kind of getting played out today globally, not just in India, is control of the supply chain part, and also which is linked to a little bit from a geosecurity and geopolitics point of view, right?
Yeah.
Where many countries are saying that from a supply chain angle, if I want to control my autonomy or sovereignty going ahead, I want to control the supply chain. And hence people are kind of playing out that journey. And I absolutely see no harm in looking at it. Obviously, I also have a point of view that at a larger global level, if things are more synchronized, from a planet level, it becomes more efficient. But I also understand that at the end of the day, sovereignty and the kind of individuality which each nation wants to retain is also a reality, right? Yep. So from that angle, I say that the way indigenization of supply chain needs to happen, and how quickly that indigenization happens, and at what prices that supply chain control comes in, is something which will define the pace of this journey. The direction of the journey is inevitable, I say. But the pace of that journey will get defined by the economics and the level of control that these supply chains define. That is one angle. The second angle, I believe, which is probably critical, but I would not say as critical as the supply chain aspect of it, is also the capability angle. I think the capabilities which have to augment these supply chains have to be also built up, whether it is people, whether it is processes, whether it is actual investment in the industries, which has to happen to ensure that these supply chains are indigenized and localized, will also define the pace to a large extent. And finally, to support all of this, you boil it down to money. But I think that will be probably from a larger country perspective, for India, would probably be the least of the worries. Given the kind of place that we are in, India, people not just see as a place where potentially these things can be made, but it's also a large market, and which kind of ensures that largest market actually. We are the largest population in the world. So from that point of and a growing one, we want to be Viksit in these 23-year time frame or 20-odd year kind of a time frame that one is talking about. So from that angle, that I believe is going to be, money is also going to be important to kind of feed this entire chain. But I think that is one of the least of the worries. From a point of view of regulation, I think in India we have, obviously things can be better, they will evolve. But I think what I have also seen in few years, and I'm not saying based upon particular political inclinations or so, but I believe in general, in last couple of decades, I would say, probably maybe starting from liberalization, one would talk about. I would say there's a lot of thinking in the government which is kind of backing from the fact that you have to support growth. You have to listen to industry. There is increasing and enhancing levels of accountability in the governance, right? Which are kind of ensuring that the guardrails in the form of policy, regulations, laws, obviously the pace
will differ in different
will differ in different areas. Yeah. But then there is always this intent, which is kind of creating that path, which I believe is also going to be a very important factor to play or pace out this entire journey that we are talking about till 2040.
So definitely the intent is definitely the first thing, and then now everything will flow. Okay, so let's understand that you have built that vision. If I give you some superpowers now, let's assume 2 interventions that you want to take to achieve that vision, and you have everything. Okay, you are the most powerful person in India, and those 2 interventions you can actually bring in. What would that be?
Power is dangerous. That kind of power is definitely dangerous.
Your decisions will decide that.
Yeah, of course. And to assume that one is prescient enough to make decisions for an entire country, which is going to impact an entire country of 1.4 billion people, I think that is really
pressure situation that you have created.
Not just pressure; it's a dangerous situation. Okay. It's just like a dictator, right? Dictators are not known to be making most prescient of the decisions. But yeah, I mean, on the lighter note. But yes, I think from a point of view of 2 most critical areas in which we can make trajectory change, right? I think one of the important areas is going to be on how integration of vehicles into the grid can be done in a more seamless manner. Now, this is a multi-pronged approach. Now, it can come in from a grid point of view. It can come from a OEM, auto OEM point of view. It can come from a charger OEM point of view, right? All of these, and then obviously there are a lot of regulations. There are a lot of policy measures which need to happen to create a prosumer situation, which we already see in the form of that peer-to-peer trading, right? As initial steps.
The producers now.
I think that is a major step in unlocking the future. Getting those steps, I mean, it's a evolving process, obviously, but getting that process in phase, in motion, through all these mechanisms, through all these directions of intervention, I think is going to be a very important play in the entire journey. That is one. The second, I think, is building the capabilities and supporting the market to, we talked about localization of supply chains, right? Yeah. Now, localization of supply chains in the initial period does need a lot of support, right? Because you're building up things, you're bringing in technology, you're creating those capabilities in the entire ecosystem. Now, in that journey, I think the government also, or the ecosystem players, have a very important role to play. You could see this getting played out in solar in a way, right?
Yeah, a lot of push actually happened.
Yeah, so, and that push happened for years, yes, if not decades, yes, right? So I think even from an electric mobility point of view, from the entire journey of this entire space, I believe there is going to be that role which will get played on building this ecosystem. And the idea is not just about indigenization. I think it is about ensuring that we control our journey, right?
Yeah.
Today, obviously, we are dependent on that technology. World is, in fact, not just us. But do we want to be in that space forever? For next 20 years? Even after 2 decades, do we want to be in that space? So from that angle, how do we start working towards it? And I think that is what government is already doing. All these phase manufacturing PMP programs or ACC programs which have been launched, where government is incentivizing different parts of the industry to localize. And I think these just have to be doubled down on. It's already there, We just need to kind of ensure that the right support is happening there, and we are kind of building on that journey.
It's the power that we gave it to you, and you'll have to ensure that. Okay, great. And one last thing in this, let's assume 2035. What is that one thing that would have happened that would have left you like smiling and said that now we are on the right track? What is that one thing by 2035?
I think the EV penetrations have already crossed more than 50%.
Okay. So that's one number that you can try.
One. If one was to just look at key headline kind of thing as you're looking at. Grid is already, the energy levels in the grid. Today we are talking about, 50% already installed capacity is there. But then the green energy which is getting introduced in the grid, energy is also reached a majority levels.
Okay.
And grid is not failing because of that. So there are already elements of storage. There is already elements of market, free market, which are already here. So today in 2035, let us say, I will already be starting. There are, as I said earlier, just referring back to that quote again, future is already here. Yeah. It's unevenly distributed. So there will be already pockets in India which will have 100% penetration of EVs. There will be already pockets in India where peer-to-peer trading, where vehicles are already energy assets. Peer-to-peer trading has already been implemented. So that element of 2047 is already here in certain parts of India by 2035. Oh. And that, I would say, will be the stepping stone to say that by 2047, that element will get played out in different parts of the geography.
And we are on right track towards another 10 years and we will achieve that vision that you created.
In pockets, yes.
Yes. Okay. That was wonderful. A really nice vision of 2047 that we created for India. A good roadmap, a blueprint that we wanted to do. Now, we want to give you a break. This segment is what we call as PodPlay, wherein we take out some questions and our visionaries goes unfiltered. So that's how it is. And this time we have put on a new segment or a new play, I would say. We're calling it as Time for Charging Confessions. So you come from Everta, so this is what we have created. So let's start. Hope you are ready. So what is one charging claim you have heard and thought this is nonsense?
100% localization.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay. They have already achieved basically what you're saying. Okay, wow. What is one thing that customers complain about that secretly annoys you?
Emergency stop buttons being pushed.
In the chargers you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. One thing charging companies promise but rarely deliver?
100% reliability.
Wow. Okay. And where are you in that case today?
So when I said charging companies, I was thinking more from a CPO angle. Okay. As even as us as charger OEMs, I would say, we would be probably closer to 90-95%, but okay. Not 100%. Okay. Journey is progressively difficult from there. Far more progressively difficult.
Okay, yeah, sure. One feature that looks great in brochures, but nobody actually reuses that.
Unfortunately, right now it is V2G.
Okay. Okay, that's most branding stuff that's been happening today right now. I've given a situation. I'll give you a situation here because, again, it's from the charging background. Imagine you accidentally hire a designer from Mars, right, to build a charger for India. So what would they actually get completely wrong? What do you think? So what would they over-engineer when they design it for Indian context?
A designer from Mars.
Yes.
They would make a charger which works on the rated grid frequency and grid voltages.
Wow. So
exactly to that T.
Okay. Okay. And what would they underestimate about Indian context?
Role which people have to play. In terms of using the charging infrastructure. In terms of
the manual intervention that needs to happen?
So how people use it and the varied way in which people use it.
Okay. And what Indian reality would shock them most?
That people are pretty smart. They find very ingenious ways of using stuff and finding ways around things that are not working.
Okay. And do you think the temperatures and all that, will that be okay for them?
For Martians, yeah, maybe. I mean, they are already used to extreme temperatures, extreme day temperatures, extreme night temperatures. So just by going by the Martian example, yes, I would be.
Perfect. So that's the first PodPlay that we had, and that was really amazing answer that we got from you. I have another segment. It's called the CEO test. We understand Manasvi Sharma is leading is the CEO of Everta. So he specifically created some situations for you, which you need to respond instantly. And these are some crisis situations that we've created. So the first situation, the supplier fails 2 weeks before the major rollout. What would you do?
We would always have a supplier 2 also as a backup, which is already at the similar level.
Okay, wow. So this wasn't a stressful question for you. Okay, we're going ahead. A major client demands unrealistic uptime guarantees.
We'll work with them to understand what's really the use case and see what we can work around with. Because I believe that there is always some merit in what somebody is asking for. There is some reason.
Yes.
So it may look very unreasonable to me, but from their point of view, it has some merit. That's why they're asking for it. So I'll work very closely with them to figure out what really is the problem. How can we really do it?
I think that's how the brilliant mind works together. A cheaper competitor who is undercutting your price by 20%. What will you do?
We're not in that game.
Oh, wow. Superb. If you had to choose between export expansion or stabilizing in India?
Stabilizing in India. For sure.
Okay. And in a situation where a batch fails, the quality testing at the last minute, what do you do?
Halt.
Okay.
Halt production, because I believe that quality is the most important thing that you send out in the market, because that's your testimony, that's your ID card to your customers.
True that. So your largest investor are pushing you for aggressive expansion. But your engineering head is saying that the quality will suffer. What's your take on that?
I would say marry the two. There has to be a midway out, because, and as I said earlier, quality is the paramount from the point of view of where Everta comes from. For us, quality is paramount. And I'm sure investors will also understand. They also understand that quality is important. And if we go out in other markets, it becomes even more important, because at that market level, it is our calling card again there. And if we have to establish the brand, it has to be at the right quality levels, so to speak. So from that angle, I'm sure there will be a midway which will get found out. As I said, those conversations always have a right answer, which is probably neither here nor there, somewhere in grey.
Sure. Who generally wins in these situations, the investors or the other side?
I think
it's just that some of our audience could be the startup founders, and they would say, okay, does it really happen? Do you really win with the investors that are talking in the same room?
I think investors are also rational beings. They are also worried about their money.
Yeah.
While they are very bothered about the speed, they're extremely interested in ensuring also the returns happen, right? So from that point of view, the rationality always prevails.
Okay, well done. And your best engineer wants to leave your company to start a competing one. What's your take on that?
Market is big enough, and I would just wish them luck.
Oh, that's nice. A global competitor enters India with deep pockets.
As I said, market is big enough. We have place for more. More competition is actually good for the market.
Oh, so you're ready for all situations.
We should be.
So thanks, Manasvi. That was amazing session. Fun answers. We were expecting great answers. You gave us that. And now we have some questions for the audience, which we do have. We call it a masterclass about EV charging in infrastructure or hardware that we can get from you. So on that segment, I would want to ask about, we talk a lot on Indigenisation of these EV chargers. Domestic value addition should go up to 100%. That's what the aim of India is also. So where do you think this actually will end? So when can India get something like on 100% EV chargers or any such number that we can achieve in the recent years?
When you talk about indigenization as such, there are multiple layers to it, right?
Okay.
Right. So let's say the first layer, when you bring a new technology or a new capability into the country, you just simply import the finished goods, right? Then you move towards a semi-knockdown unit. Then you move towards a completely knockdown unit, which is being brought in and completely assembled over here.
Okay.
So this is the first stage of the journey of indigenizing any technology which is new to the country, which is new to the geography per se. We have treaded that already, especially in the EV charging space. Today we are talking about next stage, where from CKD level, we are moving to localization of components. Now, if you go by PMP guidelines, the phased manufacturing program for EV charging ecosystem, that has already chalked out 12 important component areas which should have to be localized in India by already December 25.
Yeah.
Now, from that point of view, if one was to achieve that, already a significant portion, if not 70 to 80% of localization of the entire BOM or the bill of material of an EV charger would be done in India.
Okay.
Right? Now, there are two ways you can look at BOM, right? A bill of material. One is the cost or the value perspective, and the second is the number perspective, number of elements in the BOM. Let us say if I have 100 elements in the BOM, how many of them can I localize?
Okay.
In value terms, in number terms. I would say in number terms, we are already close to about 80 to 90%.
Okay. 90% you're saying? Wow.
Yeah, 80 to 90%. In value terms, though, we are probably closer to 60, 70, which is progressively increasing. So, Everta, we have already set up our facility close to Bangalore in a place called Vemegal. And we'll be starting, the facility is ready, we'll be starting the production very shortly for one of the major customers. And even the first product that will come out of the factory will already have value terms 50 to 60% localization.
Okay. That's nice.
Now, moving from that number to a number which is closer to 100, which is the aspirational number which everybody has. And in number terms also, that number will be pretty high, 80% or higher in number of items that we'll be able to localize. The ones which are now remaining are the ones where the difficulty levels are higher.
In that question, actually,
Sure.
So what is those components that we're talking about which are not localized today, or what we are aspiring to get localized? Are there any specific ones?
Sure.
Like which
So-
we are heavily dependent on them?
Sure. So, I mean, if I was to divide the bill of material into three large buckets: mechanical, electrical, electronics. When I say electronics, power electronics also included there.
Okay.
Mechanical is something which can be done easily in India. It's already being done in India. Mechanical means the enclosure, all the other physical components, nuts, screws, bolts, literally.
Okay.
Those can be very easily done in India. India already has the capability. Cost-wise also, we are largely there. Electrical, which is the next bucket. That is also something which we already have the capability in India. All the relays, circuits, breaker circuits, breakers, etc., bus bars.
Okay.
Those elements are also something which can be very easily localized. They're already available in India. Again, cost maybe if you import versus you localize will be slightly higher because the scale is different in India right now. And from that volume perspective, the economies of scale have not reached that level where the prices can reach to the similar level to what probably is happening in specifically in China and some of the Southeast Asian countries. Now the third element is where a little bit of more maturity has to come. I would not say electronics, power electronics, the controllers, the controller boards which are there, power modules, the rectifiers which convert your AC to DC, right? India already has now players which are doing this or claiming to do this locally. But can India work with only one or two players? Can Indian market work with players which have only recently launched? So spread, which is needed from, so one of the questions that you asked earlier was, if one of my major suppliers fail, what will I do? Right?
Yeah.
And power module, if let us say I'm dependent on only one supplier and the market is actually just one or two suppliers, what will I do? Right?
Okay.
So from a market point of view, I would need a bigger spread of strong, reliable partners that I want to work with.
True.
When I say reliable, that's the second element. I am going to the market as an end product, a charger, where I want to commit to my customers, the charge point operators, the fleet operators, and the businesses, where I want to give them very high levels of availability. Because in our business, the charger is an asset, infrastructure asset. More it is utilized, more money you make, right? So from that point of view, it is important, it is critical that my product is reliable.
True.
For my product to be reliable, my components have to be reliable. And for my components to be reliable, my components have to reach a certain level of maturity. So in the power electronics and electronics phase, both these elements are kind of just beginning to manifest as localized products.
Okay.
Wherein we are seeing now players which are capable of doing power modules in India are kind of setting up, expanding, building that capability. But I believe that that product also has to mature and get proven itself in the market before we can confidently go out and say that we have sourced this locally and we are confident that the power quality is going to be, or the product quality is going to be matching up with what we are expecting to give our customers or what we are promising to our customers.
Okay.
And secondly, also on the controller side, right? So right now only recently there are a lot of launches that we have seen, some of the major big players launching those capabilities to make chips in India, right? And I think that is something that is beginning, right? So while we today have assembly capabilities already here in the country, but I think manufacturing is something which is kind of getting started. So in these three buckets, as I said, referring back, I believe it's the last bucket where things are right now kind of more evolving. In the electrical bucket, it's more about cost kind of coming. And obviously there is another field which is kind of also EVs are impacted by it, which is magnets.
Yeah, true.
And that's another play which is, I think, the government is also quite keen and interested in. We are not very large consumers in that space as EV battery charging OEMs, but that's also something that we'll be requiring. And I think that is also something which we believe will be also getting localized over a period of time, not immediately, is what we believe.
So you talked about your charger, which is getting launched, I think, in this year, which would be partly localized sort of charger, we can say made in India charger. When is that coming out? And second, when can we actually expect possibly a 90% or even a higher sort of make in India things?
So Q1, about the launch, Q1 of the next financial year is when we are expecting it. Q1, Q2. And in terms of 100% localized or a higher percentage localization, I think, as I said, even the product that will be coming out will be fairly, to a large extent, localized. 50 to 60% is something that we definitely will be able to offer to our customers. And I think going progressively from there, in next 2 to 3 years, we believe that we'll be far closer to that number of a significant amount of, if not 100%, a significant portion of that number getting achieved.
Okay. And because we talk a lot about localized 100% make in India charger, is there a risk also attached to this? Like,
of course,
what if we achieve 100%, but is there a big risk?
No, so absolutely. I mean, the risk is, it's not, I would not say a risk, it's probably a maturity curve. And also a cost curve, right? So India, as you know, is a highly price sensitive market,
yes.
Right? Our customers, they're extremely demanding when it comes to value for money.
Yes.
I would not say they are spendthrift, but I would say that they're extremely value conscious. And from that point of view, I believe today in Indian market, the customers, while the market itself may not have, it's still in early phases, but I think some of our customers are fairly advanced and mature in terms of the engineering capabilities, in terms of reliability, in terms of service support, etc., that they would need from a OEM like us. Okay. And to that extent, I think localization has to kind of balance out on both these aspects, cost as well as quality.
Okay. And if you talk about, as you mentioned that you are making only DC chargers, the fast chargers.
To begin with.
Yeah. Do the Indian context or ecosystem does have the capability of building 320 kilowatt, 500 kilowatt, and are these supporting system like testing, certification, everything is available?
I think we're getting there. The short answer is we are getting there. I would not say everything is available right now. So, by the way, in our portfolio, we are already having a 320 kilowatt charger, the one which we are going to manufacture here. And we have capabilities of doing even bigger. In terms of testing, certification, I don't think that's too much of a problem, right? So while the entities exist even today, which are testing these chargers even at 240, 300 plus levels, they have capabilities. The question is capability and capacity, right? Yeah. So I think it has to come from both the angles. Capabilities do exist, not maybe uniform, not maybe at very, very high levels, but I think it is getting there, and it's getting there pretty quickly. And also in terms of capacities, I think that is something which can definitely be improved upon significantly. Given the fact that if we are talking about a scale up, which is needed in the industry, we believe that there are already multiple agencies, but I think those also have to kind of be more active in that space.
Okay. And initially, because we have discussed about Norway, and now we are discussing about Indian context. Let's suppose if you have to design a EV charger, or how does a design changes from when we talk about an EV charger in Norway to Nagpur?
Norway to Nagpur. Yeah. Wow. Quite a few actually, Priyadarshi. One obviously is the temperature, right? Norway, we are talking about maybe minus 25 to plus 25.
Yes.
In India, the range is much bigger. Maybe minus 25 to plus 60.
Yeah. You're getting the heats.
You're not just getting into... So there's a lot of variations.
There
is
Himachals
and the Ladaks of the world. True. And then there is
the desert
Nagpur of the world as well. I don't know if I incidentally happened to grow up in Nagpur.
Wow.
So I know exactly how hot it can be. So sometimes it can very easily touch 50s, right?
Yes.
So summers are pretty dreadful there. So, and closer to the asphalt, the temperature can be as high as 55, right? 55, 60. So building for that kind of a temperature range, that is one difference. Second, I believe, is dust.
Okay.
Norway, it's a country which is in the Arctic circle kind of a level, right?
Almost.
Round the year, the ground is either frozen or it is too wet to some extent. It does not have so much of sunshine that the soil is dried up and it is getting dusty. On the other hand, Indian plains are known to be dusty.
Yeah.
Right? The northern part of India, the Gangetic Plains, has been dusty for eternity, right? Yeah. And it is still.
I can't believe how difficult it could be. Yeah.
So from that point of view, then the second angle becomes the dust. The third angle is the grid.
Okay.
So grid in India, I mean, with full respect to all the grid operators, it's not an easy thing to operate. It's not a simple thing to operate. And it does have its own set of fluctuations, right? Now, big devices like chargers, they have to be built for it. And all said and done, today in hinterlands, there is also an issue of availability, power availability. Not just the power quality part of it, but the power availability part of it.
Yeah.
So, for example, there is a charging session going on and suddenly if the power goes off, what happens to the transaction? From a CPO point of view, do they lose that commercial value? Will that transaction be kind of lost in the black hole somewhere? So I think the charges here have to be built for that reality as well. To say that what are the grid conditions, what are the realities of the grid side as well. And finally, I think the behavior part, which is the consumer behavior, right? I've worn that hat also earlier, and I think I kind of gave that answer as well in one of the earlier sections. One of the important, very irritating problems which our CPO faces is the emergency stop button being pressed.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why many chargers don't work, or at least some time back, that was a major issue, is because the emergency button has been pushed and it is somebody now needs to go there physically and to reset the charger. Only then the charger will restart and start dispensing power. Otherwise, it will show as an unavailable charger. So if you and I are hunting for chargers in the vicinity and there are 90 chargers, and out of those 90 chargers, if people have pressed emergency button on any number of those, which would be anything between 1% to 90%.
Yeah.
Those chargers, even though they are perfectly fine, on the app, those will figure as unavailable.
But as a user, I can't push it back up?
You can,
No.
but then
But
you will have to go there. You will have to go there to put it on, right?
Okay, I won't know
on the
basically.
app itself, you will see that the charger is unavailable. So from a CPO and from a customer point of view, from a customer point of view, for sure, I don't know what's the reason it is not working.
Okay.
It could be anything,
Got it.
right?
Yeah.
It's under repair. It's under maintenance,
Yeah.
right? So it's not working. So from that angle, I think, and that's not something that you would typically see in emergency stop button, something which is, I would not say is there in many countries or in every country, and how it is getting used, because at least in the initial phase when the users are also new, many times instead of stopping the session on the app, people used to stop using the emergency stop, and it just got halted, right? And the charger is now off the grid or off the network for apparent no reason, when it is actually quite healthy and fine, but it's off. So that's a behavioral thing. Now, how do you overcome this with technology? This is a physical button. Can you introduce interventions with which you can reset it? But if you reset it, then you might be kind of bypassing the basic mechanism why it was put in first place of emergency.
Somebody might have actually done that for an emergency
reason, for an emergency, right? So I think those kind of unique, I would not say issues, but unique situations or environments exist in India for which the hardware has to be contextualized, and which may not kind of work in, you cannot just copy paste from Norway to Nagpur.
Okay. And how much does as a life cycle of a charger generally?
So while people talk about now 5 to 10 years, chargers definitely can be longer, right? Today,
and what makes them to operate for 20 years if I have to build that?
I don't think there is,
for reference.
I would not say that it's too much of a effort to make it to 20 years. But the problem is, I would say it differently. The problem will be not about the life. The problem will be about the relevance of the chargers.
Okay, yeah. That's a different angle to see.
Yeah. So I can install a 120 kilowatt today, but if it is not future proof, if it is not modular, if it is not capable of doing, and the world has moved, or the vehicles which are getting launched are moved from, say, requirement of a 60 or a 120 kilowatt to a 600 kilowatt.
Yeah. What we have seen where GBT chargers now,
or maybe 240 kilowatt, not even 60.
Yeah.
Maybe 240 kilowatt. And I think that is very realistic, and which is why that's an angle which was actually quite important for us as Everta as well, because all of our chargers come with this capability of modularity. And I think progressively, most of the OEMs will build this over a period of time. But today
when you say modularity, what would exactly that mean in terms
so for
of
example,
EV charger?
You are a CPO
Yeah.
who has bought an Everta charger 120 kilowatt.
Okay.
Because you believe that's the current workhorse for you, for your network, right? Most of the vehicles which will come in, 2 guns, 60 in each, or 120 at most also in single gun, good to go. Now, Mahindra has launched another vehicle. They have already, by the way. And their vehicle is capable of doing 180.
Wow. This is 90, the newer model?
Yeah, they're capable of going up to 170, 180. Now, with that vehicle, what would you do as a network operator? And now that is kind of, you're seeing that as a proliferating norm within the industry. More and more vehicles which are coming in are now capable of doing 180.
Yeah.
And those users, when they come to your charging station, they experience that it's now 120. And now your competitor next door has installed a new network which has got 180 charger.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
So how
as
would
a
you,
user, I'll go. I'll shift.
As a user, that user will not come to your charging station, go to somebody else's,
True.
right? Now, in that case, what is the option that you have? One option is to replace your 120 with 180. But then that is like making a reinvestment again.
Yeah. A new charger.
The other option is, if your charger is future proof, can you bring in capabilities in that charger itself in situ, in location, without moving the charger back to your OEM, so to speak, and make it from 120 to 180?
Well, that's possible.
Yes, our chargers are capable. So today, if you buy an Everta charger 120 kilowatt, you can actually scale it up to 240 in C2.
Wow. So you can double that configuration. That's
and in between. Because as an OE, as a CPO, you would also not like to over install.
Definitely.
Because you are one also who are paying for the grid cost, right? The fixed cost. You're balancing that part out. So to say that what is the market need versus what is also cost efficient for you.
True. Okay, that was really nice and a real good learning for me also, the modularity that you have brought in the new chargers. And if these chargers can be future proof, that would be highly interesting and very usable for the users, actually, I would say. So that brings us to our last segment. It's the rapid fire round. And again, I have some questions. I have some good questions. I expect great answers from you. I hope you're ready.
So am I.
Perfect. So let's start. So choose one among this. Cheap charger or reliable charger?
Reliable charger, every day.
Wow, that was fast. Scale fast or scale flawlessly?
Both.
Okay. Domestic value addition or global component efficiency?
Domestic value addition.
Hardware mode or service mode?
Service mode.
60 kilowatt or 320 kilowatt?
Whatever market demands.
Perfect. License global tech or build from scratch?
License global tech. There is a saying here I just wanted to add.
Yeah.
Standing on the shoulders of the giants.
Okay.
Which basically means that every time humanity has stepped ahead, you stand on what has already been created. If you start reinventing the wheel, literally, you are basically setting yourself back. Yeah. That's not how humanity works.
True.
So you build from what is available.
Nice. So be in the present and build for the future, I would say. So build for India or build for export from day one?
Build for India and then expand.
Okay. Next is you'll have to give me one word for these that I'm asking. One word to describe India's EV charging ecosystem today.
Growing.
One word to describe localization in India right now.
Growing.
I was just thinking of, you would say that answer. One word Indian hardware startups misunderstand most.
Sorry, can you come again?
One word Indian hardware startups misunderstand the most.
Reliability.
One word about quality control in Indian manufacturing. Okay, that smile says it, that you can't, you don't want to say anything. Okay, I'll move to next. One word that defines uptime.
Very important.
One word that defines India's industrial mindset.
Enthusiasm.
And the final one word that will define the charging in 2047.
Exciting.
Okay. This is very
and grid connected.
And grid connected. Okay. And there's a very small segment that I have created for you because you are the CEO of the company. So let's start. One decision that keeps you awake at night as CEO.
How can I meet my customers' expectations?
One metric that you look at every morning.
Reliability and quality.
Okay. One mistake hardware founders. Okay. One thing that you refuse to compromise on.
Quality.
One thing you underestimated when you started working for Everta.
Speed, how interesting it can be. How fast work can happen.
Okay. One lesson Tata Power taught you that the startup life won't.
Scale.
And one myth about 100% make in India chargers.
It's happening tomorrow.
So that was amazing. Those answers were awesome. And now we have the What's the Vision gift hamper for our visionary guest, Mr. Manasvi Sharma today. So Manasvi, this is our What's the Vision gift hamper, and for your great answer that we had.
Thank you. It was a pleasure here. Thank you, Pridarshi.
Thank you.